Hello and welcome as today's date comes in that of the 30th day of October 2019. My name is Derek, like always, all bets, trades, and of the like, with each his own risk and their own reward. We'll start off within cryptos, mainly that of GRS and Bitcoin. A couple, really three hockey picks that I like for tonight. And NFL, I did some spreadsheet work on the greatest defenses in the New England Patriots. So we'll take a look at that amongst that order. And the 1 minute term time frame for GRS. It was right in here about 7 o'clock in the morning. Price action just yachting itself, just doing its normal nothing until it stopped that doing something. And something, of course, was an okay rise, but really nothing too fantastic given the crypto space. 24.50 up to 27.20. So that's a differential of about close to 10% just from point low to point high, doing it really fast. Having a fantastic correction amongst the 18, retesting the high and spending a more significant amount of time there, but unable to break this level of resistance, falling down below this support mark, retesting where it came from here, and doing so for a while. Short term, this resistance became support. Short term, this resistance has become support. Short term, this level of resistance hasn't been taken out yet. And we just had this happen a few minutes ago on very good volume, and the follow through volume in here is looking pretty interesting. I'm trading this against two things, and I like the way I do this. I already traded against once already this morning against DGB, and I'm also trading against LITECOIN. So I'm going to wait for a good rise if it does it. So if this thing starts to break higher, I'll sell some for LTC. And viewing such on the daily term time frame, as I've mentioned many times before, this coin has oftentimes just has fantastic moves. And it's got a long ways to go for such because we're looking at least around a 2x move, 80% minimum. And from this low, a 2x move is like 4,000 in here. Whether it will do it, maybe. It really had a piddly ass okay move here. Piddly ass because it came from a low of 23. It was stable. It was stabilized at 27, and it went up to 38. So 11 on the 27. Yeah, man, that's like 40%. That's like, yeah, it's okay. I'll take advantage of those moves and be able to sell and buy back and forth. But so far for today, the move is only that of 11%. It's got a long, long ways to go. It's just saying that it looks like it may want to have that kind of move. For what it's worth, I mean, it's not flattening the Bennett because that's been the play. It's ever since in here, and this is going back to August first, and that's all of September, all of October now. A little bit of a failed breakout attempt here, a little bit of a failed breakdown attempt here, and we'll see about this. It's if this can hold and support this like it didn't here for a while, then it's got the potential. I mean, it had the potential in here, it didn't do it, but at some point, it's got to clearly break this range to one side or another. Let's now transition on to Bitcoin, which had this decline in here and price action stabilizing for quite some time in a range of 84 to like in the low 8,000s for the most part, and 7,900 as well. And then we had the failed breakdown and the rally, which came to this little area where it came from in here. Resisting it, not a surprise. Now the question is, can it succeed this breakout move? And the 18 average to me is always going to be that main test. The 18 average of lows is now starting to cross above where the key Fibonacci point level is. Let's just see how accurate we have for the numbers. The 18 lows is 83.24. Yeah, pretty much right on it. And it'll just be rising higher than that as we move into tomorrow as well. So this area, this key line of Fibonacci, most certainly a must hold. 61.8%. That's always the maximum you want to give back in any type of correctionary mode. So far, it's had a lot of support within this 38.2% level. As from the high, the price action came down to this level, resisted this 76.4. Not really supporting it here, but most certainly resisting it on a couple of occasions, but supporting it before resisting it the last time. And now, most certainly, over the last 5 or so hours, it has been having support within it. You come down to it at 6 o'clock in the morning after it last was there at 3 p.m. yesterday. And a huge move, obviously, from a piercing below, which is a rarity, but pretty much a hit. It is a hit on this level. Just a fast move from this one to this one, doing it within the next period. But then it has been grinding its way lower ever since, has been unable to even get above the 18 average of lows since it's broken down below it at midnight last night. We had just a little bit of playing around with it for the two periods, getting up to the 18 average of the lows again, and back down in the previous hour. But this hour, holding in there, that's a fantastic move. And now we got this short-term resistance that it established a couple hours ago within the support. We've had many hits of this. So what I'm going to do is, I think the best thing is to use this against like a higher exchange because I want to look at the shorter-term time frame. I haven't done this yet, but within like say the 4 minute term. So all of these hits within this area. We got one, we got two. So from this move, this resistance came to this support, and then it just grinded its way lower. And then we resisted this support in here, but correction with the 18 lows. That's always what I'm looking for. So after you see that correction, and then you see this type of stuff here, that gave you a good signal for at least a one leg higher. That's all it was. But then in here, supporting this level of resistance, but not really for too much longer. But now we're looking at that possible short term failed breakdown, which succeeded its play for another hit within it. But on a bearish level, I would have expected to resist this level and not support it. So this is where when I say just adjusting to the message of the market, this is a spot where you tell me like half hour ago, yeah, this thing is probably not looking so good. And now you say now, yeah, this thing, even short term, we could be moments away from having a spot where this thing could break into here and then just go up to here quickly after that. And of course, as you're watching this, a lot of this has already changed. This is just short, super, super short. Uh, the uh, the 1 minute time for 4 minute time frame, still very, very short. Let's finish it off with a Bitcoin dominance and then move into some sports picks. And it's going to be all based on that last move that it's had in here. Because now it's having that correctionary phase. So one or two things is going to be able to come from this. As it's either going to have excitation from this with a good chance that it can get above this, and then we'd be talking about retesting the range between 71 and three quarters to the previous high at 73 and a third. 18 average of lows is always what I'm going to look to see if this succeeds or fails it. It hasn't even tested it yet, and then we got this big line that I put in at 69, which was the neckline for this big support where the possibility of this failed breakdown would occur. And that's why I still got to say the word possibility on it, because if that's the case and you have a failed breakdown, you can have a failed breakdown followed by a failed breakout. Those are patterns I've seen before, but I'm always going to be looking at keywords where you come from, 18 lows, and they're pretty much aligned in the same spot. So it's just a continuation of the wait and see still. And for some sport picks, I got my last two picks right, and I'm going to explain how that was the case. Two games ago, Arizona and Buffalo over 1.5 goals in period one I took, and that was a winner. It was 2-1 for Buffalo after one period of play in that game. And the final score was 3-2 in the shootout, so only one extra goal occurred. For Montreal, Arizona tonight, there's no line available, but if I get like a minus 115 or better price, I think it's most certainly worth a look. Montreal's most certainly playing higher scoring games as well, too. And they got a good first period total, averaging about 2.3 goals collectively, both teams, on the period one stat line. So I think that's a very good play. But I like to lay some goals tonight. First, Colorado laying a goal and a half in a home game against the Florida Panthers. Colorado is dominating this season, and five of their wins this year, all the regulation wins have been by multiple goals. And to get a price of plus 181, it could be close to a 50-50, 60%, 40% even, 45% chance. Actually, 45 would probably be more realistic, maybe. But still good value for Colorado to win that game by multiple goals. And for the Vancouver Canucks, I don't know why. I mean, any way of playing Canucks, I think, is fine. Playing the Canucks over in goal totals, if you get, I think, is a supreme play. Of course, unfortunately, with me, I can only get the home teams. Los Angeles is at home in this game. Vancouver has really got their team developing very well with with all the young players, Peterson. Uh, they just got a lot of good young talent playing. Bo Horvat's playing really well. Josh Levo, who they acquired from the Maple Leafs, has been a very good acquisition to that team. And they're getting pucks in the net. And the Los Angeles Kings are doing a very good job at allowing pucks in the net. Los Angeles allowing 5, 6 goals almost like every game, like it's nothing. And Vancouver scoring 5, 6 goals. So it seems like it's nothing in every game for themselves as well. So that is what I'm liking tonight. And yesterday's pick, I'm going to say, is already correct, even though that game is tomorrow night. And that was for George Kittle over 5.5 receiving yards. And I got a price of -113. Now the price is -170, which is no, you can't take that. That's just a terrible price now. But it's interesting. Maybe you're watching this video. Hey, it's a interesting how maybe someone made a wager from the actual thing. Maybe someone else seen it. But when the way I look at it is if you see it and you know the line is kind of like too good to be true. Well, sometimes it is, and when that's the case, how long are you going to be able to have that line for? And obviously, that play is off the board. They had 5.5 for a 67 receiving yards. This is a line that probably should be 6.5 or even 6. Maybe 6 would be a better number. Let's now move on to NFL team defenses. I searched the internet for the top 10 defenses in the league. The first one I came up with for that was with the Broncos. I can remember these four very, very well. Not so much the 91 Eagles, even the 85 Bears. I mean, I was such a young kid at that point. I was barely alive for the 76, and I was not alive in 69. But what we're looking at is statistics that I got from the internet. Unfortunately, we don't have sacks on here, which is unfortunate that they're not on there. I think there's one more that I wish they would have had. But there's a lot of good statistics on here. The New England Patriots so far this season in 8 games, which is a good number to look at this at because I can take a look at this at the second half of the season and see how these numbers transpire. But we're looking at half a season, a horrible. I mean, literally every single opponent's not been good. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger. Even I think the injury's been affecting him all year. I gotta think every single opponent they've played has not been a good quarterback. Their next 5 games, they play Baltimore, they play Kansas City, they play again against another decent opponent in the AFC. They also play Philadelphia and Dallas, Houston, Houston as well, and then they also play Miami, Cincinnati, and Buffalo at the end of the season. So we're gonna have 5 different good opponents. So we got the 2015 Broncos, 2004 Bills, the 2002 Bucks, the 2000 Ravens, the 91 Eagles, the 86 Giants, 85 Bears, 76 Steelers, and the 69 Vikings. And points allowed. New England's allowed 61 points, and we can see here the 2015 Broncos and the 2004 Bills allowed a lot more. Especially when we look back at this, even if you add the game differential, the two equivalents, you're talking about 170. But we're also in a new age of football too. So the fact you're at 61, that's I gotta say a lot of that is variance as well too, with the weaker opponents. And looking at some of these statistics again for other ones, yards per game, defensively allowed. Patriots allowing 234. Some of these earlier ones, there was lower passing yards per game period as it was. So there are the good ones for there. Total plays, which is good for other statistics, which we'll get to. And yards per play, 4.1. Some of the other defenses, I think they beat that below, but for the recent times, they're up there as the top for recent ones. Turnovers, 25. So if we double that, we're at 50. But this is the Bears at 54 here, and this is a 14-game season with 46. We also have a 50 in here too. So it hasn't been anything spectacular. It hasn't destroyed other teams. In fact, the Bears defense obviously beating that. Completion percentage for quarterbacks 52.4%. And in a new age of passing, the Broncos, that one was 60%, but a lot of them are lower. Yards a game, Right now, it's only at about 150 right now. And all of these, of course, very, very, very low. In fact, the only outlier of 200 is the 1986 Giants. Touchdowns to interceptions. I mean, this is where it was sick. It improved actually. It got worse or whatever you want to look at it. It was 1 in 18 coming into last week, but Baker Mayfield only did the 1 and 1. But 19 and 14, 20 and I mean this 10 and 31. This was just sick by the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And they did it in the Super Bowl big time that year as well. And that's what a lot of these teams have done. Vikings didn't win. I think the 76 Steelers did. The Bears won. The Giants won. The Eagles didn't win. The Ravens won. The Bucks won. The Bills didn't win. And the Broncos won. And I don't think any of them lost the Super Bowl, actually. The ones that. No, the 69 Vikings, I think, might have lost the Super Bowl. I don't know. They did lose their share. So now continuing on further, we got the touchdowns here. I mean, some of these other ones, 8 and 30, 9 and 22 in the past. I mean, the only one on the outlier in here is that the opponents were 19 and 14 with the 2015 Broncos. But these three teams here were the teams that were the start of the new change of this higher offense, as even is the new Philadelphia Eagles, because the 1990s was a higher scoring decade than the 80s was. As far as rushing the ball, there's an outlier here, and that's the New England Patriots. They have averaged 4.6 yards per run, albeit they've only allowed 2 touchdowns against the ground, on pace for 4. But I got to think that number, I mean, Ezekiel Elliott might get that in one game. We'll see. And as far as some statistics, what I'm going to do here, just so we can see the teams better, is go like this. So this is on here. Okay, first of all, let's go over these three percentages. And I don't have them on. Well, this is what I downloaded. I mean, so I don't even know how they're calculated. Actually, I know how these are calculated, but I don't know how this is calculated. This is score percentage per drive. So 7.7% of the Patriots' drives end in a score. 26.9% for the 15 Broncos. So this number's got to only go way up. I gotta think it's got break north of 10 as the season ends. Turnover percentage 23.1% of drives end in a turnover, which is up there with the 2000 Ravens. And expected points by them. So they're on pace for 350, which is lower than what the 2000 Ravens scored. Some of the teams are in negative proportions. These are some pretty large numbers. And they don't have defensive touchdowns on here either. That's another one we don't have. So here, these are ones I calculated. These because I have numbers of plays. So for every amount of plays, how many plays does it take for them to average a turnover? It simply, as you read it, plays divided by turnovers. So the 2019 Patriots so far are turning the ball over every 18 plays or so, which is up there with the 85 Bears as 17.5. It's up there with the 76 Steelers, 69 Vikings. It's also up there with the 2000 Ravens and the 91 Eagles. I think they will have a very difficult time beating any of those teams. I wouldn't be surprised if that number rises north of 19, given, of course, those 5 opponents that they're playing. Now, this one is most certainly got to be variance. Every 113 plays, teams play against them, they score a touchdown. And the score percentage is 7.7% again. It's got to go higher. When you look at some of these numbers in here, the higher the number, of course, the better. And how many plays it takes to get a first down. So an average every 4.39 plays it takes, which is lower than where the 76 Steelers and 69 Vikings were. But again, a much different day and age of pro football. It was a punting game back then. Punters were at their best, as the final score was 17-13. Of course, I'm sarcastically serious because it was lower scoring back then. 76 and things were changing in 76. It was actually 70 in the 70s. There were some pretty good scoring games. So you might Steelers defense, if you're watching this, yeah, you might have something to say about that because I know Terry Bradshaw was able to get the ball moving, and you had to face Roger Staubach and stuff like that. I understand. But Joe Montana wasn't yet in the league either. However, 1985 Bears every four, which was a very, very uh, relatively low number, all things considered. But 85 Giants was low. Of course, the lower, the worse. The higher, the better on this. Same as the 1991 Eagles. And I also got some statistics as well below. This was just, I just took one random bad defense. It was the worst defense as far as this last year. So Raiders had the worst at negative 172. So therefore, the Raiders average every last year on a first down play 3.07 plays against to get the first down. Every 18.7 plays, people scored a touchdown against them, and every 57.2 plays they turned the ball over. 9% of the drives, 10% ended in a turnover compared to these. 44.3% ended in a score compared to these lower numbers. When we look at yards attempt, you know what? Not too much of a difference as far as this year's Patriots. Of course, what we are seeing here is that 16 touchdowns compared to 2. 2,200 yards. What do we got else on here? Yards a game, 240, which is actually below the league. That was pretty good. League average, I think, last year would have been probably close to 250 to 60. And 62.3% completions compared to all these lower numbers. 17 turnovers for the entire season, and look at all these numbers. And that's really what the big defenses do. 6.3 on the yards per play compared to all of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this file and then come back to it at the end of the season. And then when I download it again, I can subtract the final season numbers and get a H1 and H2. So what we're going to do is we're going to go H1 on this, and then we're going to do an H2 again. Thank you for tuning in and have yourself a great day. Bye bye.